You may not know this, but I've been a math lover ever since I was in elementary school. I enjoyed the process of arithmetic, solving problems, and other topics like algebra, pre-calculus, geometry, and even trying to read pure mathematical notations despite not getting half of it. There are a quantity of ways in approaching a problem, and you usually know when you're on the right track in your solution. Perhaps my fondness grew from the teachers who taught me math and from its systematic nature. Except proving. I loathe proving. Every time I take a test on proving, I would only get it right 2 out of 10 times, chiefly because the items you encountered are things you've never seen before, which forces you to lock on your sights and extract insights to know what proof would help you prove the hypothesis. But despite liking math, when I began learning algebra in the 6th or 7th grade, there was always a question that's been living in my mind that I'm sure has lived in yours. When will I ever use it? Sure, basic arithmetic can be used for the transaction of goods and for tracking things, but what about other topics like algebra and pre-calculus? These answers slowly emerged from the darkness, and one of these answers came in a way I never expected. On a certain afternoon in August 2022, when I was still in college, I was feeling drowsy when I was brainstorming with my group about what project we would be doing for our art subject. I would question myself about why we had to take arts when we're students taking Bachelor of Science in Computer Science. But this prickle of irritation was simply due to the lack of any coherent idea for the project we had to do. The project revolved around historical artworks in the Philippines, making a presentation of it, and making a makeshift replica. I tried and tinkered and fostered potential artworks my group could work on, but nothing came out of my mind. I loathe being a burden in any group-related work, but I couldn't find any way to be useful. So, I decided to help my friend debug his code to better spend my time while chatting with another friend who currently had an ongoing meeting. As I was in the middle of juggling the group project, the debugging session, and the small talk, I heard 3 sharp thumps on my door which swung open immediately. It was my sister. She stood there, staring for a moment, almost as if she was trying to guess what I was doing when it was a school day. And then her mouth opened. How do you grade things? A test, I mean. 13 items having a total of 65 points. Mom needs help grading it. The highest grade range should be between 85 and 97. I beckoned her to wait a moment, as I already knew what to do. There's a lower limit and an upper limit. 0 and 65. I just need to use the slope formula and we'll be getting the metrics we need for our mother to grade her students' quizzes. I flipped to the back of my notebook, grabbed my pen, and started writing my solution. I believe that I was a genius for instantly identifying a great way to solve this. So I was surprised when I couldn't get the right output. But I know it was the right solution. I just couldn't remember how to implement it correctly. While she was still waiting, I dismissed the messages I received from the debugging session and hopped over to Discord to ask how to use a slope formula in my context. Unsurprisingly, no one replied, which left me no other reason but to search for it myself. In hindsight, I should have searched before asking, but time was of the essence. After a minute or two, my sister told me to not worry about it too much, because she'd find out on her own or just wing it. And she left the room. I found myself staring at the doorway, and I was appalled. As a person who likes math and as someone taking a computer science degree, it stained my pride to fail in something so simple. You were given a problem, all the important details were present, and all that's left was the solution. A 1, 2, 3 finish. But what's more important than my pride is the fact that you absolutely cannot wing or guess the grade a paper will be having because it will become inconsistent. What happens if you realize too late that the grades were wrong? You'll do them all over again. So I spent the next 10 minutes searching and checking Khan Academy and realized that my y sub 2 and y sub 1 should have been of the same type. That is, These values should have represented the score range, and the x values should have been for the raw score, or the points. I went on Desmos and plotted it, and whoops, the second x and y values should be the larger values. There we go. With the slope plotted and examined by yours truly, I called my sister who was downstairs, trying to estimate the score for each point. Once she stepped into my room, I turned my laptop to face her. Look! She gave a confused look. What am I supposed to do with that? She asked, slightly irritated. I explained to her as clearly as I could to save her time. What you see is a slope that travels infinitely to both axes. But all we need is to click and hold the slope and drag it in the range between 0 and 65 of the y-axis. The x represents the raw score and the y represents the graded score. So, if I get a 0 in the test, I would get 85 instead of 80 or some other number. Once she caught my drift, I graphed the same thing on her laptop and we were able to help our mom grade her students' tests. I went back to my room and was greeted with a flood of messages from the debugging session and from my other friend. What about you? Any topics from math that you thought you'd never use but ended up using it? How'd it go? Or maybe you had an experience where you almost failed at something despite it being your expertise. Do tell.